Chapter 7. Cooperatives, Unions, Democracy. Bernstein's version of socialism promises that workers will share in society's wealth so that the poor become rich. But how will this socialism happen? In his article in Neue Zeit, Problems of Socialism, he only gives vague hints. You can find more details in his book. Bernstein says that socialism will be achieved by using two tools: labor unions, what he calls economic democracy, and cooperatives. He believes that unions will stop industrial profit and cooperatives will end commercial profit. Cooperatives, especially those that produce goods, are a mix of ideas within capitalism. They are small units of production that work inside the system of capitalist trade. However, in a capitalist economy, the way things are exchanged is more important than how they are made. Because of competition, every business must let the interests of capital control production in a very harsh way. This control shows itself in several ways. Workers are made to work harder. The workday may be lengthened or shortened depending on market needs, and, based on what the market requires, workers are either hired or let go. In short, businesses use all possible methods to survive against competitors. Workers who form a cooperative in production then face a hard choice. They must govern themselves very strictly. They are forced to act like capitalist managers. This contradiction is why production cooperatives often fail. They either turn into regular capitalist businesses or, if workers' interests win out, they eventually break up. Bernstein himself has noticed these problems, but it is clear he does not truly understand them. For example, he and Mrs. Potter-Webb explain the failure of production cooperatives in England by saying they lack discipline. But what they call discipline is just the strict, harsh way capitalism works, a way that workers cannot use against themselves. Production cooperatives can only survive in a capitalist economy if they can find a way around the contradictions imposed by capitalism between making things and trading them. They can only do this by stepping away, even if only for a short time, from the rules of free competition. And they can only succeed if they secure a steady group of customers, a constant market. The consumer's cooperative is the one that can help its partner in production. This is not the same as Oppenheimer's idea of separating cooperatives that make things from those that sell them. Instead, it is the key point Bernstein looks for. Why do producers' cooperatives always fail when they work on their own, but survive when they have the backing of consumers' groups? If producers' cooperatives can only exist when consumers' cooperatives also exist, then producers' cooperatives are, at best, limited to small local markets and to making things that people need right away, especially food. This means that both consumers and producers' cooperatives are kept out of the big industries like textiles, mining, metals, oil, machine construction, train building, and shipbuilding. For this reason alone, even before we think about their mixed character, production cooperatives cannot be seen as a tool for a complete social change. To set up producers' cooperatives on a wide scale, the world market would have to be shut down and the global economy broken into small local areas. This would mean that our modern, advanced capitalism would have to go back to the small-scale merchant economy of the Middle Ages. In today's society, producers' cooperatives only serve as small additions to consumers' cooperatives. It seems, then, that the change must begin with consumers' cooperatives. But in that case, the social reform expected by using cooperatives stops being a real challenge to capitalist production. Instead, it becomes a fight only against small and medium-sized business capital. In other words, it becomes an attack on just the twigs of the great capitalist tree. Bernstein also believes that trade unions are a tool to fight against capitalism in production. However, we have already shown that trade unions cannot give workers full control over production. They cannot decide how big production should be or how technology should improve. This is the economic side of what Bernstein calls the struggle of the rate of wages against the rate of profit. This struggle does not happen in an empty or abstract way. It happens within the clear limits set by the wage law. Trade unions do not break the wage law, they simply work within it. According to Bernstein, trade unions are the ones who lead the real fight against high industrial profit in the overall movement to free the working class. He says that trade unions have the job of turning industrial profit rates into wage rates. But the fact is that trade unions are not very effective at launching an economic attack on profit. They are only organized efforts to defend workers' labor against the drive for profit. They show the resistance of the working class to the unfairness of the capitalist system. Trade unions have two main jobs. First, they try to affect the labor market, which is where workers and jobs meet. However, this influence is often weakened because more people from the middle classes are joining the workforce. Second, trade unions work to improve workers' lives by trying to get them a larger share of society's wealth. Yet, as workers become more productive, the share of wealth they receive naturally gets smaller. Even a quick look at Rodbertus' explanation of the social question shows this is true. In short, the way capitalism works turns the work of trade unions into a never-ending struggle, much like the myth of Sisyphus pushing his boulder uphill again and again. But despite this hard work, trade unions do help workers get wages that match the labor market. Their efforts force the rules about wages to be followed and help slow down the negative effects of economic changes. However, to turn trade unions into a tool that steadily lowers capitalist profits and raises wages, two big changes would need to happen. First, the process that turns more middle-class people into workers would have to stop. Second, the steady rise in workers' productivity would have to come to a halt. Both of these changes would mean going back to the way things were before capitalism. Bernstein believes that neither cooperatives nor trade unions can change the way capitalism produces goods. He says that these groups only work to lower the profits of capitalists and make workers richer. By doing this, he gives up on fighting the capitalist way of production and instead focuses on fighting the way wealth is shared in capitalism. He often talks about socialism as a way to create a fairer way of distributing wealth. It is clear that the unfair way wealth is shared in capitalism is what drives many people to join the socialist movement. When social democracy fights for an economy run for everyone, it also aims for a fair sharing of wealth. But, as Marx pointed out, the way wealth is shared naturally comes from how things are produced. So social democracy does not try to change wealth distribution while keeping capitalist production. Instead, it fights to end capitalist production altogether. In short, social democracy wants to create a fair socialist system by ending capitalism, while Bernstein's plan is to fight only against the unfair sharing of wealth, hoping that this will slowly bring about socialism. Democracy has been seen in many very different kinds of groups. It appeared in early groups where people shared everything, in ancient slave societies, and in the small-town communities of the Middle Ages. In the same way, governments where one ruler has all the power or where rulers share power have been found in many different economies. When capitalism started, with people first making goods to sell, it used a system where many people had a say in the town communities of the Middle Ages. Later, when capitalism grew to include factories and mass production, it chose a system with one strong ruler. Finally, when the economy became fully industrial, France first set up a democratic republic in 1793, then had an absolute monarchy under Napoleon I, later a nobles' monarchy during the Restoration period, 1850 to 1830, followed by a bourgeois constitutional monarchy under Louis Philippe, then again a democratic republic, then a government that fought against Napoleon III's rule, and finally, for the third time, the Republic was born. In Germany, the only real sign of democracy is that everyone gets to vote. This was not something the middle-class liberals won by themselves. Instead, giving everyone the vote helped bring together many small states. This idea mattered only for the middle class, who were otherwise happy with a semi-feudal constitutional monarchy. In Russia, capitalism grew for a long time under a strict, one-person rule, and the middle class never showed any real desire to bring in democracy. In Austria, giving everyone the vote was mostly a way to try to save a weak and falling-apart monarchy. In Belgium, the workers won the right for everyone to vote mainly because the local military was weak and because of the country's special place in both geography and politics. Here we see a small bit of democracy that was won not by the middle class, but against them. The idea that democracy always wins, a belief held by both some revisionists and middle-class liberals, seems like a great law of human and modern history. But when we look more closely, it turns out that this idea is just an illusion. There is no fixed, overall link between the growth of capitalism and the spread of democracy. The way a country is governed comes from many political factors, both from inside the country and from outside. It can range from a system where one ruler has all the power to one where the people vote for their leaders. So, we must give up the hope of making democracy a rule that always happens in history, even in modern society. Today, in middle-class society, we see political forces that, instead of making Bernstein's plan come true, have led the middle class to give up the democratic gains they had won. Democratic institutions, and this is very important, have finished doing all they can to help develop bourgeois society. They were needed to join many small states into big modern ones like Germany and Italy, but now they are no longer needed. Economic growth has healed things inside. The same is true for changing the whole government system from old feudal ways to capitalist ways. Even though this change always went along with the growth of democracy, it has now advanced so much that the parts of society that are only about democracy, like letting everyone vote and having a republic, can be removed without forcing the government, state money, or the military to go back to how they were before the March Revolution. If liberalism is now completely useless to bourgeois society, it has also become a problem for capitalism in other ways. Two forces now completely control the politics of modern states: world politics and the labor movement. Both are just different parts of the current stage of capitalist development. Because the world economy has grown and competition in the world market has become tougher and more common, militarism and the idea of having big navies have become powerful tools in world politics. They now play an important role both inside and outside the great states. If world politics and militarism are growing in this stage of capitalism, then bourgeois democracy must naturally decline. In Germany, the era of building huge armies began in 1893, and the policy of world politics started with the taking of Kyoto. These actions came at a cost right away: the breakdown of liberalism and the weakening of the Center Party, which moved from opposition to government. The Reichstag elections in 1907, held under the sign of German colonial policy, were also the final end of German liberalism. If world politics push rich people to follow old ideas, the same happens at home because the working class is growing. Bernstein shows he sees this when he blames the social democratic idea, which wants to take over everything, meaning the working classes push for socialism, for causing rich liberals to leave. He tells the working class to give up its socialist goal so that the very scared liberals might come out of hiding. By saying that stopping the socialist labor movement is needed to save rich people's democracy, he shows that this kind of democracy goes completely against the natural way society is changing. At the same time, he proves that the socialist movement comes from this same change in society. But he also shows another thing. By saying that giving up the socialist goal is necessary to bring back rich people's democracy, he shows that the claim that rich people's democracy is a must for the socialist movement and for winning socialism is not right. Bernstein's argument goes in a circle. His conclusion just repeats what he started with. The answer is quite simple. Since rich liberal ideas have died out from fear of the growing workers' movement and its true goal, we see that the workers' socialist movement is now the only support for something that is not really the aim of the socialist movement: democracy. We must say that democracy has no real support. We must also say that the socialist movement is not tied to rich people's democracy. Instead, the future of democracy depends on the socialist movement. From this, we must understand that democracy does not have a better chance of surviving just because the socialist movement grows strong enough to fight against the bad effects of world politics and the rich people's turning away from democracy. Anyone who wants to make democracy stronger should try to make the socialist movement stronger, not weaker. If someone gives up fighting for socialism, they give up both the working class and democracy.